everyone, welcome back to Touch the Fire Twice. I'm Joshua, and I'm here today to do a haul and candle review of the Bath & Body Works White Barn Candle Company recent release of the Ingredients collection. So we believe there are 5 scents, at least as of now, within this collection, 3 of which now appear online and in many stores. So I will go through, show you the 3 that I purchased, talk a little bit about the other 2 that I don't think anyone has necessarily sniffed yet. And then I do have my sort of traditional in-depth sniff comparison review in the sense that I will sniff them, tell you what I think about them compared to the notes, talk about the design, the aesthetics, and etc. in general. And then I have here, for the 3 scents, I have 7 candles to compare them to that are either reminiscent or similar to, either similar notes or just not necessarily similar notes, but certainly smell the same, so that either you can get a better sense of what these candles may smell like, what I think of them, maybe these are other scents that you smelled before, maybe they're not, but at least get a better range of, you know, what is this going to smell like, what, if I like this, will I like that, or not like this, not like that sort of deal. So let's dig right in. First of all, I will say, interesting collection, the idea of it. You can see here, so this is the first one. This is Coconut and Vetiver. Very, very simple. I think it's a decent aesthetic. It's something a little bit different. It's interesting, a little bit clean, classy, sophisticated, just simplistic, which I think it kind of has that modern edge, which is nice to have some collections that look like that. And they do a ingredients collection, which we haven't really seen much marketing on it other than, you know, ingredients meaning they're not names that evoke a feeling, a place, a space, a mood. It is really like the ingredients or notes of the candle. So that's where they're going with that. But again, I think when you think of the design, in general, I like it. Just different colors here for the different scents. The one thing I will say though, it is, of course, these are your typical 14.5 ounce 3-wick Bath & Body Works candles. They all have that white wax. I do think the lids, so there's just the typical bright chrome, silver kind of lids. I do think maybe a lid that was maybe like a brushed, you know, sort of gold or something like that would look a lot nicer. Maybe not this exact kind of gold, but just, you know, they do a lot of different brushed metals now. This kind of just looks like the generic, you know, it really doesn't elevate it and doesn't really match the muted colors of this to have just this bright, shiny chrome, but not a big deal. Either way, the lid's the least important part of all when it comes to the candles. So Coconut Vetiver, first one. Then we've got Bergamot and Birch, a really pretty blue color blocking there. And then finally, Vanilla and Santal. So I will also mention that there is a white oak and yuzu that is not online nor in stores as far as I'm aware. And then there is also a coffee and tonka. There's a photo of that on Life Inside the Page, the blog that has many sort of pre-release insider's info on Bath & Body Works candles and many products over the year, but that also is not online, so it's hard to say if that was a test, if it'll show up later, probably will, but as of now, not to my knowledge, no one has reported a sniff or a review of that. So we're gonna dig right into this. I will go through each of them and, you know, again, talk about what I smell in it, and then the comparison for each with the different scents. So Coconut and Vetiver, again, this is matte here, then it gets glossy with these 2, you know, just like warm browns, and it just says White Barn scented candle made with natural essential oils there on the bottom. And the notes on this one for Coconut and Vetiver: coconut milk, wild jasmine, vetiver with natural essential oils. You can see there, pretty straightforward. I would like to hear more. 3 notes is not going to be telling you a whole lot, especially when 2 of those are pretty much on here. Though it is at least interesting to know they're going for coconut milk, which it's not coconut husks, it's not coconut meat, it's not toasted coconut. There's many forms that coconut can take, from earthy and dank to, you know, bright, tropical, fun, in the sun, you know, sipping your colada on the beach. So that's not what they're going for necessarily. And then wild jasmine, we know jasmine is that really heady white floral, and vetiver, the grassy, green, earthy root of a grass that grows in, you know, swamps and murky areas. Sniffing this is, I definitely do get coconut in here. Coconut milk, it's not super sweet, so it's not cream of coconut. Don't confuse it with like your ingredients for pina colada where it's cream of coconut. It is really just that coconut milk that maybe you would use in like a Thai curry or something like that, where it's just the creamy, heavily fatty milk of the coconut. So that is in there. The jasmine is heavily in there as well. This is a very heady floral, your typical jasmine, though I would say almost leaning toward like a powdery tropical floral, almost like a plumeria, hibiscus, something along those lines, which is a bit surprising for this, kind of. the fact it doesn't have it in the name. Now, coconut and vetiver both can be sort of in island tropics, etc. So it could be sort of that they're evoking here with the jasmine as well. Now the vetiver, I don't get much in the way of vetiver, but there is a bit of an earthiness to the candle that I assume is sort of that green, almost a little spicy, a little bit warm, rich that you're going to get from vetiver. But it is mostly overtaken by the jasmine followed by the coconut. Like they're pretty like maybe 35 and 45%. You've got the jasmine and the coconut, and then about 20% maybe something like the vetiver. Now, what's wild about this one, I haven't burned these yet. Of course, this is really primarily just the haul and sort of first impressions. I do like it. I think this could be a nice evening scent. It does lean more summery to me because of the coconut milk, but it's sort of like a dark tropical. It's not their, the tropical collection that came out in early 22 that was all daiquiris and ocean waves and like bright neon flashing lights sort of tropical escape. This is more like jungle island, which is kind of interesting and much more, earthy and of the floral and fauna around us. So depending on what it's like when it burns, I am intrigued by it. Now to compare it, I have 3 scents to compare it to, one of which it's nearly identical to, and it surprised me because I wouldn't have thought of this until I was smelling it, and then it just kind of popped in my head. But first, I'll say that one for last. First up, 2 here that honestly most folks probably haven't seen because these were both failed test scents for the most part, but Vetiver from back in the day, and then Oak Moss and Vetiver. This was the test collection. I have a review from the test collection of this from 10 years ago, that a few of the scents from this collection have gone wide over the years, including a few 1 or 2 popular scents. But it's worth comparing. So Vetiver here, of course, warm, earthy vetiver blends perfectly with rich neroli and fresh citrus with tobacco and coriander. And then the oak moss, I'll show you that. And the oak moss and vetiver infuse your home with a luxurious blend of oak moss, vetiver, and lavender, right? So comparing that, I would say the oak moss and vetiver, there's a similarity, which I'm assuming then is the vetiver that's showing up in here. But there's a lot more bright sweetness with the lavender and a green sort of dryness with the oak moss. So certainly not the same, but it does kind of prove to my nose that there is vetiver in here, even though it is subtle. The true vetiver scent here, I mean, this is like a beautiful like perfume. The complexity to this really is top notch. And there is a similarity there. So again, the idea of the earthy, green, spicy, warm, almost dirty but not quite dirty, grassy but not a green grass from vetiver, the vetiver root of the grass. Again, shows up in here, it's just very subtle because they didn't want to overwhelm you with that. What's wild, the candle that this smells most like to me, this was, I believe, a collection that went wide. We're talking early 2013 at this point, so 9 years ago. This was kind of the original Destinations collection, where I think 4 or 6 of these before they had, like later that year, a huge like 14 city country destinations collection. It was a big thing for a couple of years at Bath & Body Works. But this was called Aloha Waikiki, Hulas, and Hibiscus, an exquisite fusion of plumeria petals, tiara blossoms, and a hint of sugarcane that transports you to the Big Island. Now, plumeria is also known as frangipani. It is a floral that is sweet, spicy, can be a little bit like a jasmine, almost a peach, a citrus, honeysuckle, gardenia. Those really heady florals is what you're gonna get with plumeria or frangipani. Heavy in here. Plumeria is also used traditionally for traditional Hawaiian leis around your neck, so it makes sense that it was included in this candle. But it's wild. These are very similar. So I hesitate to call this, true floral, because this one was talking almost all florals, plumeria, tiare, but there very well could be an unlisted coconut in here. The difference between these, while this is sort of all floral and even more powdery and creamy, this does have a bit of the earthiness of the vetiver and a heavy hit of coconut milk, which there could be a little bit in here, but more of an earthy coconut milk in here. So kind of wild, but I would say don't count this out. If you like a floral, go for this. If you don't like florals, still consider it, because the neutral coconut milk brings the florals down a bit and the vetiver adds a little bit to it, but it can't be mistaken. This certainly does have a heavy floral influence in it, but in an interesting kind of unique way that Bath & Body Works doesn't always do. So I do like that from the first sniff. Then move on to Bergamot and Birch, Really pretty, these blues, again, this muted dusty blue with sort of your traditional blue there, your royal. Notes on this one, vibrant bergamot, black amber, and birchwood. Now, when it comes to this, I was excited about this one. This was a little bit more up my alley. Bergamot, of course, that bitter orange, that fruit that is going to be sparkling, it's gonna be bright, it's gonna be green, it's gonna be a little bit bitter. It's not gonna be, you know, your typical juicy sort of orange or lemon or anything like that. It's going to have this edge to it that is used in, as you know, many perfumes and colognes are going to have bergamot in it, and many home fragrances will have bergamot in it as well. It's gonna be green, it's gonna be refreshing, it's gonna be sweet, almost like lime, but with more floral undertones and kind of herbal. Then you've got your black amber. Of course, amber is going to be like ambergris. That's going to be animalic. It's going to be deep. It's going to be, think of musk. It's really a form of musk. It's going to bring a weight to it, but also a spicy, warm, round, also again, kind of resinous, rich warmth to it, different than a wood warmth. And then of course, birchwood, really big fan of birchwood. Birchwood is going to be sort of woody, sweet, sappy, green. Sometimes the birch tar is associated with more like leather fragrances, but birch is going to be usually bright. It's in many of your sort of traditional holiday scents. Sometimes birch will also have almost leaning toward like a wintergreen sort of sweet, spicy, somewhat pine resinous fragrance, but it's going to be also very green and kind of herbaceous as far as tree and woods goes. And this is very clean. This is very bright. It's not very heavy. It is well balanced. Certainly the bergamot is in there, because you get that green, sparkling citrus. Bergamot almost by default to me is almost always sparkling, that idea of like the sparkling citrus that you get in many fragrances. Balanced with the birch, again, sort of sappy, a little bit of not quite cooling, not quite mint, not quite wintergreen, but a wood that again it's almost like a white, cool wood versus a warm, tan wood. You know, if you kind of think of in temperature or colors. Refreshing. This is gonna be more of like almost could be used in a bathroom scent, almost a bit of like an old-fashioned men's shaving cream scent when you're talking about the birch in there. Bright, clean, almost like a spa in a sense, but not your, you know, Zen spa, more so your really clean, bright, fresh. Kind of could fit in a collection with like a fresh bamboo. It's not fresh bamboo. It doesn't have the kind of dewy green notes, but certainly it could fit in that intensely refreshing, uplifting fragrance category, in my opinion. Only one to compare that to would be Whitewater Birch, which again, that failed test collection. Notes on this were fresh, clean blend of marine notes, woods, and a hint of citrus, or a bit of citrus. Not the same, though you have, I'd say, a good similarity. That I think the birch and the citrus really in this were kind of a base toward this. This really, I think the amber is additional in here. But this one really smelled like a kind of like an old-fashioned men's shaving cream or aftershave in a nice way. This one, there's more of the bergamot that I don't think that this Whitewater Birch had, potentially, to make this, again, more sparkling. Really well balanced. I would almost say the bergamot does show up almost similar to a really fine lime zest. When you think of bergamot, think of like the zest for the bergamot, not less than the juice. Yeah, I would actually call that a little bit almost like, if you wanted to call it like a lime edge with the woody birch. So it's a fresh wood. Really, honestly, the more I sniff this, really pretty. I like this one a lot as well. And then finally, the one that I have the most to compare to, so I will try to go through these fairly quickly, but is Vanilla and Santal. Santal is sandalwood. That is Indian sandalwood. The notes on this one, vanilla woods, fresh moss, and Santal. And this is just like sort of a mustardy yellow here. This one is intense. I would say it is the most traditionally woodsy, but it is very dry wood. It is still kind of fresh wood, I think probably because of the vanilla in there, but it is not dark. It's not overly heavy. It's like summer woods in a way. The vanilla woods, that's always a tricky one because it's, you know, it's not really vanilla. It's not a gourmand vanilla. It's not a vanilla extract. Maybe vanilla almost like the orchid that it comes from, like a bit of a powdery vanilla with the woods, but they're clean, fresh, like sheer woods without leaning too, you know, traditional like perfume woods. Almost like a musk, but not quite. The fresh moss, that's a little bit of a dried greenness to it. Earthy, there's some earthiness to it for sure. And then the Santal or the sandalwood, think of sandalwood, there's many, many fragrances, we can smell it. I'm gonna compare here too, but this sandalwood is very dry. It's like, it is warm. It is almost like a blonde kind of sandalwood. This smells like fresh shavings or from like a carving or something. It's not sort of the creamy, overly all-encompassing sandalwood that sometimes you get in the blends. Really fresh, really nice. I think a wood that can work for daytime and for summer. It's not just like a deep, autumn evening wood. To compare it to, there's a couple that are really reminiscent in my mind. First is the original. A lot of folks are familiar with this one. It was a one and done, but it was out back in mid 2015 at White Barn. And this was Vetiver, Black Pepper, and Pine Wood. This was a very dried pine wood that almost, I feel like, was similar to a sandalwood. But something about this almost seems a tiny bit mesquite, sort of like mesquite wood chips. Perhaps that's the earthiness of the vetiver, the spiciness of the black pepper. The similarity really is just the wood from here. I like the vanilla Santal better. This one is not quite as balanced for me. This is more like mesquite chips without the smoke, and some earthiness from the vetiver. No earthy vetiver in here. It's just the moss, which is not as deep and heavy as a vetiver. So a little brighter, almost want to say a little fresher perhaps. Then two more, Sage and Cedar. Again, that Failed Tales collection that I referenced a few times here, but this one actually did come back as Black Tie. So if you're familiar with Black Tie, you know Sage and Cedar, which is a blend of sage, cedar, and rare tonka bean. Some similarities here. The wood is similar. This one, there's really a round warmth to this one, which I believe is the tonka showing up there, but the sage and cedar, again, cedar is not sandalwood, but we're talking a wood, and they do have a similar brightness to them, which I think the sage, there's almost potentially like the moss can kind of show up, I think almost sagey a little bit, where it's like a warm, almost herbal, like a green sage or white sage as well, like a dried crushed sage in here that's not on the notes. I could definitely see that in the background. And the final, Sandalwood Citrus, which had notes of grapefruit, lemon peel, and sandalwood wrapped in warm musk. Pulled this one out because I really wanted to compare the sandalwoods. Similar, although this one is much more a sparkling citrus sandalwood with your lemon peel and your grapefruit. Very, very bright, with some musk in it, but very, very bright. And more of your creamy sandalwood. Doesn't really smell like wood as much. This smells like freshly shaved, carved sandalwood. Dried, very, very dry. Almost powdery, but not to choke you out. Again, not a warm sandalwood, just a, almost think of like Palo Santo or something like that, where it's a very dried, or like pencil shavings, even though that's usually a cedar, a very dried wood. Really quite nice. I'm impressed. These are all pretty much new blends. They're quite different as well. So I think that they're, they are a bit elevated as far as they're pretty conceptual. They're not telling you exactly, it's not a drink, it's not Hot Havana Nights, whatever it might be, but they're very unique, and especially for Bath & Body Works. And I would say they really are cohesive in the sense that they're not so wildly different from each other that it's like, why are they in the collection? But they are not the same either, in the sense that like your coconut vetiver, earthy, complex, a little bit sweet, more of the floral. This is the one that has the florals in it, again supported with a little bit of earthiness of that vetiver, which makes it a little bit deeper, and your creamy coconut milk. The Bergamot Birch is the bright citrusy one that has that edge that is again, there's no floral, there's that sweet, sappy, almost sparkling birch that you get with the sparkling bergamot, and that little hint of almost like a lime in the background, very fresh. And then the comforting vanilla Santal, which is a little bit more musky, very much so on the earthy sage moss angle, and a very, very dry sandalwood. So quite different. The more I sniff them, the more I really have, dug my nose into them. I'm really finding them interesting and unique, and I'm really happy to give them a chance to burn. So that is my review. Let me know if you've smelled these, what you think of them, if you've tried them, if you want to hear any more about them. I would love to hear your thoughts, and until next time, take care.